Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Cairo. My name is Ahmed ABDEL-LATIF. I am the Director General of the Cairo International Center for Conflict Resolution, Peacekeeping and Peacebuilding, CCCPA, and the Executive Director of the Aswan Forum for Sustainable Peace and Development. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the Government of Angola, the African Union, and UNESCO for holding the second edition of the Biennale of Luanda. I would like to also express my appreciation for the invitation to address this inaugural session titled Arts, Culture and Heritage, Levers for Building a Culture of Peace in Africa. This has been an eventful year for African culture and heritage. For Egypt, it witnessed the official inauguration of its National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, showcasing a rich history and cultural heritage dating back thousands of years and highlighting how our country has always stood at the crossroads of so many civilizations. This rich and diverse cultural heritage has been instrumental for our country to flourish and become a beacon for sustainable peace and development. Beyond Egypt, this year also witnessed African authors winning 3 of the highest literary prizes around the world: the Nobel Prize of Literature, the Man Booker Prize, and France's Goncourt Prize, reflecting the vitality of African culture and creativity and its contribution to the universal human experience. This year also coincides with the 75th anniversary of UNESCO, and it reminds us of the Constitution of UNESCO, which states that it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. This is also a shared belief in Africa, that a peaceful and secure continent can only be attained by nurturing a culture of peace in its societies. This is also rooted in Aspiration 5 of Africa's Agenda 2063, which envisions a continent with strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values, and ethics. The Luanda Biennale, as a Pan-African forum, plays a key role in the realization of this aspiration, which needs to be achieved in collaboration with African forums that address peace and security issues. It is for this reason that the second edition of the Aswan Forum last March recognized the importance of culture for Africa's peace and security agenda, and thus the need to develop synergies with forums such as the Biennale of Luanda. Relatedly, I'm very pleased that Ambassador Mohamed Gad, in his capacity as chair of the African Union Peace and Security Council, has joined this session in order to materialize these linkages. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa has an exceptionally rich cultural heritage, whose diversity should always act as a bridge, not a barrier. Our diversity should bind us, not divide us. Yet we cannot ignore that political and socio-economic grievances often mobilize cultural differences to fuel conflict and polarization. We need to combat such attempts. Furthermore, the confluence of the COVID-19 pandemic and terrorism has further brought complex and multifaceted consequences. By claiming lives, eroding social coherence, and destroying livelihoods, the pandemic is exacerbating pre-existing vulnerabilities and grievances, thus providing fertile grounds for militant groups to exploit such vulnerabilities and perceived exclusion to gain support. In light of the above, prevention is key, as also reaffirmed by the first and second editions of the Aswan Forum. The culture of peace in Africa should be first and foremost a culture of prevention. Adopting a preventive approach requires effective and inclusive governance that fosters social cohesion and coexistence. In order to realize the aspirations of Agenda 2063, African actors, governments, institutions, partners need to first ensure building viable and resilient national and local institutions that are capable of managing complex risks and facing interconnected threats, thus strengthening the resilience of our societies. Second, adopt a people-centered as well as a whole-of-government approach to prevention. And third, adopt an integrated and coordinated approach across the humanitarian development peace nexus within their respective organizations, programs, as well as partnership frameworks. The African Union, on its part, has already put in place a number of normative frameworks on preventing conflict and sustaining peace across the peace continuum. Some of these bodies and tools include the Continental Early Warning System, which facilitates the anticipation and prevention of conflicts in Africa. The Panel of the Wise, which is one of the critical pillars of the peace and security architecture of the African Union, and it provides policy recommendations and advice to the African Union Commissions as well as the African Union Peace and Security Council with regards to various conflict contexts, including through preventive diplomacy, conflict management, and fact-finding missions. FENWISE, the Network of African Women in Conflict Prevention and Mediation, which aims to strengthen the role of women in conflict prevention and mediation efforts by providing a platform for strategic advocacy, capacity building, and networking. The African Peer Review Mechanism, as a main vehicle for prevention on the continent through the adoption of policies and practices that contribute to political stability, sustainable development, and accelerated regional and continental economic integrations through sharing of experiences and best practices. The AU's Continental Structural Conflict Prevention Framework, which has been represents a coordinated approach to structural conflict prevention. It seeks to identify and address structural weaknesses, and it includes tools such as the structural vulnerability and resilience assessments, as well as the country's structural vulnerability mitigation strategies. And also national and local peace councils and committees. And we have seen that in recent years, some African countries have taken considerable measures to create such national and local peace councils and committees as early warning and early response mechanisms through dialogue and reconciliation initiatives across their societies. These institutions are formed on the basis that most often local actors are on the front line of various crises and conflicts. Many of these tools and mechanisms I have just mentioned are rooted in our African traditions, and the role of such traditions should be more recognized in efforts to resolve conflicts and achieve peace and security. These tools also embody innovative approaches to conflict prevention and management that we in Africa should be proud of. At the same time, where commendable steps have been taken to implement them, tangible progress still remains limited and has been further complicated by the pandemic. It is now more imperative than ever to mobilize our efforts and strengthen our cooperation to take forward the imperative for African countries to mainstream structural prevention in their policies, planning, and implementation. In addition to these tools, partnerships are key to advancing the implementation of these frameworks and tools. Partnerships between the African Union, REX and REMS, the African Union and the United Nations, as well as the African Union, African countries and the development partners, which are key to also advancing these prevention efforts. Before concluding, we cannot ignore that among the threats to peace and security on the continent, terrorist threats are no doubt the prominent one, where 7 out of 10 of the countries in Africa are most impacted by terrorism overall in the world, shattering the stability and social fabric of many African societies. Preventive measures cannot ignore the central role of ideology and misrepresentation of religion as a driver of extremism. Therefore, preventing radicalization and extremism leading to terrorism should also be a high priority for the culture of peace in Africa. This is a matter of importance for Egypt as well as CCCPA, where we have developed a program in this area which focuses on prevention, building resilience, and empowering local religious leaders and communities. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, all these preventive efforts, frameworks, and tools are inherently part of a collective effort for promoting an inclusive culture of peace in our continent with the participation of its women and of its youth. We look forward to the second edition of the Biennale of Luanda to take forward the culture of peace agenda in our continent through holistic approaches, concrete measures, and long-term partnerships. We also look forward to build on the deliberations of this edition at the upcoming edition of the Aswan Forum next year, and I wish you successful deliberations. Thank you very much.